So I don't forget. And I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. So you see my screen? I hope so.
Yep.
Yes.
So welcome to the first Tableau user group for 2021. Last time we met was in October online. I think it's good to be using
Oh,
those.
Fred, is the wrong. You just need to swap it. I can see your notes.
Ah.
Yes.
Mind you, I don't have too many notes, so it's not a big deal. There's a couple of links on that front page. The first one is, as Vivek said, we got a LinkedIn page. So if you want to even scan your screen, you can just join the LinkedIn, and we just have usually quite a few announcements when we have sessions running. We just put them in there. The link on the left-hand side is organizing user group is nice and easy and simple, but the struggle is to get presenters. So I've created with Kyle a form. So on the small link at bit.ly/brisbane.tag. So if you're interested to talk at some stage, we've got potential 4 talks this year potentially. If you're interested, you want to talk about something Tableau related, or tell us a story about data visualizations or your journey, you don't know when you would be presenting, just scan the link and put your name down. So next time we run one, potentially in May, June, or whenever, we can contact you. It's nothing formal, but at least we're building a bit of a database of speakers, which I think is good to have a few names ahead. I also like to start acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I also extend the respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and First Nations people that we're meeting here today in Australia. So I think that's important for Australia to acknowledge the traditional owners. A couple of things I've also found in the community that I thought that was worth sharing. So those are interesting projects from Kevin Frederic. I don't know if you saw that on LinkedIn or Twitter, but you can basically put your name down as a Tableau user on the map. So I think that's a brand new project. Kevin is a Zen master, very active on the community. So you can go on that link there and just put your name down. And if you want to be found, I think someone could just contact you and then you could meet up. So I think that's quite a useful tool. I think a few of you have done it. I think it's quite a fun project. The other one for that just flag. And as I said, I'm not from Tableau, I'm just a user, but I thought those are very interesting and cool kind of resources for the Tableau users. The Racial Equity Data Hub, and Caroline, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that went live pretty recently. If you're interested in data viz that's touching equity, racial, that's the place to go. I think it's part of the Tableau Foundation, but that website has a lot of resources. So I think that's very, very interesting. And if people post things in the chat, because I don't really see the chat, maybe Carl, if you can monitor the chat and let me know, or maybe just turn your microphone on and we can have a bit of a chat. The next one, and looks like I'm a Tableau sales rep, but I think this one, I thought, in case you haven't seen it, it's went live, I think last week. Tableau Community, it's a big, brand new website for all of us. I mean, Tableau users. So I think there's a lot of resource on that website. So I will encourage you to have a bit of a look, and there's a lot of good content, Q&As, forum, everything is in there. So I think that's pretty cool kind of resource. I don't know if anyone has found good resource. Maybe if you go spend a couple of seconds sharing something, put something on the chat maybe, and then share your resource. I think it's good to share all those for all of us as users. So today we've got 3 amazing speakers. So we're going to be starting with David Keys, that would be talking about his, I suspect, your Tableau journey over the last 10 years already. Then Scott would be, I suspect, would be a bit of a geeky talk talking about fine-tuning performance in Tableau. And then last one would be Young. Young is a PhD student, or was. I think you finished, Young. You can correct me. So I do follow Young on social, and he's always posting amazing stuff on data viz in science space. So I think that I'm really keen to to listen to him. And I also have a few key dates. I think this one, maybe we can talk about later, but potential talk for the next time, and a couple of dates for training. Maybe Dave, you can talk about those if you want, but I might just send over to you now and we can start the first talk.
I've got to learn to unmute myself. Sounds good. Thanks, Fred. So I'll just, with the dates, look, the dates are the next Brisbane tug. That's one that's been set up by Fred. After that, we've just listed pretty much any training that we're aware of that's going on, and any other major events we're aware of that are going on that are quite specific to Brisbane. So at this stage, we haven't put in, Fred, I should say, hasn't put in dates for next Tableau conference. We're still waiting to see what that looks like, to be honest. So I suppose I should share my screen.
Yeah, share your screen and tell us your story or your journey.
What I'm going to do, it's actually a bit more than 10 years, believe it or not. And I've got a good little demo to show. 1, 2, 3. So I've just put the opening slide for Fred, and I'm just going to go through a few things. These will be a little bit of website driven or Tableau public driven. So it's actually more than 10 years I'm going to be talking about. You guys, I don't want to go through too many old stats. There's too many old, and I will be honest, I struggled when I started thinking about, okay, 10 years history, it sounded good when Fred and Kyle suggested it. And then I thought, there are so many charts just going through what happened, which release, which this, which that. And I wanted to do something different. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of quick stats and then get into something a little bit different. Founded in January 2003, I first purchased Tableau in August 2007. So I'm now up to about 14 years at this stage, which surprised me when I saw that. I used to love being able to say I was 10 years plus. What I'm going to be going through is partly about my observations growing with the company. When I first bought it, I was working for IBM as a business objects Cognos data warehouse developer. So one of the things that I was going to touch on, I'm not going to go heavily into stats and charts, but where are we? Where have I got them? That gives you an idea of and there are better ones around, but I just wanted to get something that gives an idea how frequent the releases are. So you can see that there's a lot. The other thing you can observe is the number of sub-releases that are coming through. There's a lot going on in this space with Tableau. And I'd have to say, based on my experience from back here, I've rarely struck any really, really significant issues with Tableau. They've got a fantastic team that are doing a quite sensational job at making sure when the product gets through beta, it's through beta for the right reasons. So the release frequency, major new features, and again, I don't really want to go through too many of these, but and I will just point out a couple of websites that can be useful if you want to look at them. And again, I'm just playing around with my business. Get out of there. So there's not that many websites that are really, really good at giving what went on at different stages. This, if you're interested in the releases, the best one is actually the Tableau website. There's a page there, products, all features, or you can get a different page for the different products and their specific features, but it's very comprehensive. So the next thing that I was going to touch on, I'm really fast tracking getting through this. Stock price, and that's because the stock price was valid up till bought out, and I found this one, then I found this one, which was more current, up till Salesforce bought Tableau. You can see what was going on. I remember when it was first released, and how it got up to about $50 and then tumbled, and people that were working at Tableau at the time were really worried about that. It's quite unreal how the world turns. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and this leads a little bit into what I'm about to show you, is the install size. As Tableau is building more and more features, there's obviously more coding going into it. And the install size through the releases has been quite phenomenal. So if we come back here, my first copy was 3.6, and it was about 16 megabytes. Can you imagine getting Tableau Desktop now in 16 megabytes? So this is how the desktop product has grown in the install size, and it's now sitting somewhere, this is only up to 10.2. It's now much more than this, obviously. But I just find it fascinating watching the way it's grown. So what I was then going to go and show everyone was where I went back. I've got an old NAS drive at home. And I pulled some stuff out from the NAS, and I found my original Tableau install. I said 16, sorry, it's 14 megabytes. I also found the key for when I purchased it. I'm not sure Carolyn's going to like me showing this. Back so long ago, that was the Tableau logo, which most people now would say, that's quite against Tableau, and it is. Back in these days, this is the way you got the license key. There was no online license key. So having shown you all of that, I thought I'd bring it up because I managed to get it to still work. Tableau version 3.6. Back when I got this, the licensing was a little bit different. So I got a perpetual license, which is the reason that this one still works. This license doesn't allow me to do upgrades over that, and now you're pretty much getting everything on subscription. The other thing was this one was called the Professional Edition. There was a non-professional edition that would allow you to connect to Excel, Microsoft Access, and CSV, and that was all. So it's changed quite a bit. You can see the layout is actually, well, it looks different. The foundation that they did way back then was actually really on the money. And it works in much the same way. It's still very drag and drop, so we can still go and say, okay, what's the sales and what's the order date, and come up with, it's coming up with a discrete year. But if I look at that, you can see that the way it's doing the values is quite different. So it's no longer in here doing, the same thing where it's got, I can go in here and break this down and get it out. And then I can go and change between discrete and continuous. They've learnt along the way. What I'd suggest is that in the way that Tableau have done this, they've been rather evolutionary. It was revolutionary for what it was at the time, but the migration from 3.6 to what we're looking at now has been very evolutionary, and they've done a great job of working out how to get different things working in different ways. The other one, I've got another one here that I opened up one of the show books, the WOW workbook, and this has a map. But if you come over here, you'll notice that there's no functionality for geospatial functions. It doesn't exist. they've somehow, and not long before here, I was trying to work out how they've got the background map in there, because you'll notice there's no mapping menu up here. So it's quite different, and it's quite nice. So I just thought I'd spend just a little bit of time giving you a quick walk through. Carolyn, Fred, Kyle, what time should I be targeting finishing?
You've probably got sort of T-minus 3-4 minutes left, Dave.
Okay, so I'll just walk through some of the examples of what they've done here. Everything's pretty much the same in the way you do it. There's just additional functionality going on. There were table calculations back then. They didn't have the same depth of what they've got now. That's your table calculation. We could still back then go and shift things around. So different pills or different, I forget my terminology, different, these things going to different areas. So I can put that down there if I want to. A lot of people aren't aware you can do that now. And then I'm just going through a few different visualizations, and you can see they're just using the annotations. We've got the, you'll see there's no tooltips in here. We're getting a tooltip, but it's more default rather than something that's on the marks table, on the marks facility. We can still do small multiples and that sort of thing. I don't have an ability to go and add borders around different things. So really, I guess all I'm doing here is showing you what it used to look like. And the other thing I'd probably add in here, when I was doing this, when I was working for IBM, I was really very Cognos business objects focused from any sort of visualization point of view. I got this, and it came across my email, and I had to download a trial and give it a go. It was mind-blowing to me, just the cleanliness and the simpleness of it. And that just stood it so far above what was going on with anything from the other products that I was dealing with. The other thing, just very quickly, and I think most people, I don't have a plus down here, but I can still go and add a new worksheet or dashboard. There's no stories back here. I can go through and still do things like, okay, show me sales and market segment, customer name maybe. It does have show me, but it's way, way more limited than what we've got here. The other thing it's got is a alternate show me, and that gives us something close to the show me that we're looking at over here in normal times. That's probably about it for where I was planning to take you. Probably and I'm happy to open up to any questions. The one other thing probably there is, does anyone remember the old MSI install type? So in there I've got, these are some of my early days in Tableau, MSI, then we went to Tableau 8, and I deleted a lot of the ones between there. 8, 9. But open to, if anyone wants to see what anything's doing on there, I'm happy to open it up. Otherwise, I'm ready to hand over to Scott.
That's amazing, Dave. You could maybe run a training session with KeyData on the I mean, the tool was amazing at the time, and it looks like it's some other BI tools are lacking behind. Yeah, retro Tableau training, but I must admit some of the modern tools look like that those days. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
Thanks
there's one thing that I just remembered also. You can have different windows going around like this. So, you know, little things, some are good, some are bad, but you can see the way that Tableau's evolved over time. And I really do think they've done a fantastic job.
It's really nice. Cool, moving on. Scott, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. I will share my screen.
Yeah, share your screen and you got the floor. I don't know if you can see the floor in Zoom, but so you're able to share your screen, Scott?
I think Dave has to stop sharing his.
Oh yeah, David, get out, please.
I'm just trying to work out how.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, it's all good. So that's it.
Yeah.
Your turn now, Scott. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Zhu. I'm working for KeyData as a business intelligence consultant. Today, I'm very glad to share an approach that we recently used in a Tableau performance troubleshooting project. Before we get started, I'd like to brief you with a little bit of background information of this project. It's a performance troubleshooting project for a large foreign bank. And the Tableau dashboards are built on Impala data source. This is the most tricky part and challenging part of this project, I think. Impala, for anyone who haven't heard it, is a data engine that is used to access Hadoop big data. It's very different to RDBMS database. For example, we can usually create some indexes on the fields where table joins or filter conditions applied to improve the query performance. However, Impala does not have indexing concept at all. Instead, it uses a partition, which works in a different way. In this project, there's one particular dashboard that takes over 35 seconds to finish loading in average. The worst case, I think, is 46 seconds even. Our client's expectation is to reduce the loading time to 5 seconds. I have to say that it was a very ambitious object. However, if this target is not achievable at all, we need to provide convinced evidence. And also we should provide what the best result we could have to the client. Well, this is the background of the project. Now let's look at what the approach we used in this project. As you can see, our approach includes planning the test, preparing test cases, performing test cases, and collecting results, isolating and identifying key issues, and last, providing conclusions and suggestions to client. The approach itself follows an agile management processes. At the beginning, we try to work on 10% to 20% key factors that contribute the most to the slow performance. Then we will have an interactive process to include more factors if the major issues are not covered by as we expected. Today I got around 15 minutes, so I will be very much focused on that 3 parts highlighted in the middle. So as to the first and the last part, we will very quickly pass them by. For planning the test, there's nothing special in this area for this project. In short, it's all about defining when to do what by whom. Now let's move on to the first thing I would like to share in today's talk. That is about preparing test cases for Tableau performance tuning. Well, I guess some of you may be already familiar with this flowchart. Yes, it's one of the best practices for performance troubleshooting recommended by Tableau. You can find all details on Tableau online help documentation website. I think the main idea about this flowchart is to help us quickly isolate and identify the key performance issues in a logical way. As we all know, there are too many things that could potentially cause the performance issue when loading or running a Tableau dashboard. So if we want to find the major problems in an efficient way, which area and part we should look at first, and in what sequence should we look at them. This flowchart gives us the answer. In our project, before we started planning the test cases, we followed this flowchart and found out which paths we might go through and what kind of test we might need for it. And like this, our test should be able to tell us if the slow performance issue occurred on the both server and desktop. And because we are using live connection, that's because the client really needs the real-time data. And we do not use any customer SQL. So according to this flowchart, we should work with the data engineer to tune the database first. Unfortunately, we don't have that impla resource. We are not able to determine if the query on multiple source tables caused the main performance issue when loading workbooks. So that means we need some test to discover that part. And we also made an assumption in case there's no issue with impala data source at all. So which part we need to look into the workbook design section to understand which part of workbook slow the performance significantly, and to what extent. This kind of question should be also covered by our test cases. Again, we leverage the best practice recommended by Tableau using Tableau performance checklist to prepare the test cases by choosing some key factors that are relevant to the workbook design. This is another tool recommended by my colleague Andy recently. It's quite a handy tool.
Hello, please, I'm on the call.
Hello?
Merci.
Sorry. Well, hello? Okay.
So now you can go on. Sorry.
Okay. This dashboard, this tool is actually a dashboard, which you can find it on Tableau Public and created by Lovekish. And it basically you can use this one to easily, it basically allocate all these factors in different category, as you can see here. And you can use this one, reminding you to pick up some most important factors when you're preparing your test cases. Okay, now let's have a look at the first version of the test case. In these test cases, we included those key factors that could be relevant to the performance issue. It includes table joins, data source filter, dimension filter, row level calculation, database driver, running environment, and data source type, and row level security check as well. As you can see, for each test case, we replicate the original workbook in zero case, which is zero case, and remove some parts or add some filter conditions. This way, we will be able to isolate and identify the key issues and see how they impact the workbook performance as well. And later in part 3, I will walk you through some examples of these test results by using Tableau visualizations. You might be wondering if we can just have a single run against the original workbook to find out all answers by using performance recording logs. I think the answer is yes when you are just looking at a simple workbook. However, if you are looking at a complex workbook which contains over 20 worksheets, and each worksheet may contain multiple queries running in parallel or sequentially, just like this workbook. I'm afraid that the chance for you to understand the relationships in those key issues and their impacts within each other is very little when you are looking at a single run of performance recording file. Okay, now it's time for us to look at how we perform test cases and collect test results. Guess what do we use to record those test results? Yes, we are using Tableau performance recording functionality provided by Tableau desktop and server. It's very handy and useful and powerful tool. For anyone who is not familiar with this tool, you can simply go to Tableau desktop menu and from here, help, settings and performance, just click on the start performance recording to kick off. And it can be used to record every detailed event when you're running or interacting with the Tableau workbook. When finished recording, it will automatically generate a dashboard called the performance recording dashboard workbook that presents the results in some visualizations. Then you can start performance analysis from there. On Tableau server, you can access the view first, then just put this string record performance equal to yes at the end of the URL, and press enter to reload the page. When it's done, you click on the clock icon like this one to generate and display the performance recording dashboard. So now let's see how it looks like for the performance recording dashboard. It shows the main events and the time consumed while recording performance. However, it cannot exactly tell us what the relationships are in those events. Here, according to the timeline chart here, the duration for all events involved is around 25 seconds. But in fact, this workbook actually took around 35 seconds to finish loading. So where are the rest 10 seconds spent? Actually, by default, Tableau excludes all other events from the dashboard. If we bring these other events back, you will see the event that takes the longest time is one of them, 34 seconds, which is quite close to the actual workbook loading time. What is that other event? We will explore this soon. Now, let's look at the timeline chart first. This Gantt chart tells us the exact start time and duration for each event. It's useful for us to get a bit more understanding about how those events run in parallel or sequentially. But it contains too many events in this chart. It is a little bit difficult to read this information by this kind of visualization. Even I already filled out those events, take out anyone less than 1 second. And you can see it still has too many events. And again, from this chart, we do not know what the relationships are in those events. To get better understanding of the relationships about events, we had some conversation with Tableau and also got some clarifications about the performance recording data. Based on that, I customized the workbook and created some dashboards, new charts using the exact same data source. Now let's have a look. In this customized performance analysis dashboard, we have the total number of events that were captured by performance recording. And we can easily find the first start time and last end time. Also, we calculate the duration based on that. And comparing to the standard timeline worksheet, the big difference here is we put all events to different levels using a field called depth. Actually, Tableau teams, they use depth, path, and levels to track the stack of what events are emitted during other events. For example, you can see if a query is being run while connecting to a data source or while rendering a viz. Another difference in this customized dashboard is we display process time. Yeah, process time exclusive along with the elapsed time, so that we can know whether the event is parent event or child event. Elapsed time it includes child events. Exclusive doesn't. And in this customized dashboard, we can further use thread ID and the context ID to display associated parent and child events. In this case, the parent event with activity name performance at level 9 that has a lot of child events. To identify all these child events, we can just need to click on thread ID here. And then all associated child events will be highlighted. All events, including parent and child events, took 34.43 seconds to complete. But actually, this parent event itself just took 8.5 seconds. That includes some waiting time as well. And all child events under that cost around 26 seconds. Just use this one minus this one. If we look deeper, we can see a lot of other child events in the deeper levels that are not directly associated to the parent event at level 9. However, they are spawned by high-level activities. For example, at level 18, these child executing query events are related to the parent event at level 14, but they have different thread IDs and context IDs. Now let's pick up one of these executing query child event to take a close look. If we display all associated events under it, we can see more detailed activities. Like the green bar, you may often to see it's executing query event, but actually it's a parent event. How do we know that? By comparing this elapsed time and process time exclusive. We know that. Another child event, wrong query, just under the green bar, at level 35. At level 35 is a base event that really runs the query. See, if you look at the elapsed time and the process time exclusive. And if you select this majority event feature, you can display all that kind of base events in this dashboard. And also I created some other customized visualizations, like displaying start time and end time for associated event group. This associated event group is defined as a group of events that have same context ID. Then I use the first start time and the last end time to calculate the duration for that group of events. As you can see, I also built some interactions between these two worksheets. For example, when I select the associated event group 771, all detailed events will be displayed in below timeline chart. If I further select one activity here, I can display all events within this selected duration, regardless this context ID, just like this. But in this case, I already filtered the results by choosing executing query events only. And there are 35 queries running during that period. And yeah, so what can we see from this chat? Obviously, unlike other queries, the first and the second query run sequentially without any overlap. That means if we can reduce the runtime of these two queries, then the total query time could be improved accordingly. Then we further look at that two queries, and we found some inappropriate design in workbook caused this some unnecessary cost for that two queries. Like this one, just bring all the values into a filter list. If we change this type from the from this job down list box to the custom list, we can save that time. And for this query, I think the developer is trying to use an arrow in dashboard by creating this dummy worksheet. However, this is not necessary. I suggest them to just use a picture in dashboard directly rather than use this, because think about if you've got 20 million records behind this dummy calculated fields, then each field will create a value for them. So it's not necessary for that. And this can save like five seconds around.
Sorry, Scott, a couple of minutes and we wrap up. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sure. I will be fast. Since this work can also, if you can see, the second thing is, since this work contains 35 queries, seems it already reached the maximum limitation of 16 queries running at the same time. This is a Tableau default setting for most of the database. Most queries took over 4 seconds to run. This is something looks not ideal to me. I suspect the table joins caused the query performance issue on Impala database side. So we strongly suggest our client to involve an Impala expert to further look into the query performance. After collecting all testing results, now let's see how to isolate and identify key issues. Since we have very structured data in test cases, we are able to create some Tableau visualizations to present that analysis and analyze the testing results. In this one, we include all test cases. So we have an overview to quickly look at them and see what the major problem is there. Obviously, we can see all test cases in origin color that contains the table joins have slower performance than others. For special case one, we remove every element from the workbook and just keep the main fact table that contains over 10 million records. That costs only 0.22 a second to display total number of records and cells. It means there's no database connection issue or database driver issue. The query performance only becomes very bad when having a data source with multiple table joins. In this dashboard, we remove components from the original workbook piece by piece. In this way, we can obtain some understanding about how performance impact for each part. And as you can see from test case 10H, when we change the filter type from drop down to custom list, that reduced at least 3 seconds from whole workbook loading time. And in this dashboard, by comparing case 4 and case 4a, we know the performance is dramatically impacted when implementing the low-level security approach. And this dashboard tells us, including dimension filter without indexing, will potentially slow the performance, and using low-level calculations might significantly slow the performance. Yeah. Finally, based on our analysis, we provide some conclusions and suggestions to our client. That's all what I would like to share with you today. Thank you.
That's really good, Scott. Thanks a lot. I think that was very interesting content. And maybe if we have questions, we can keep them to the end. And maybe if people listening tonight can maybe contact Scott or Kyle if they want to find out more, or David. Well done. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you.
So do you mind, Scott, unsharing your screen? That's it. And then we could start with young new PhD student from UQ that does a lot of data visualizations on the science field. Over to you, Young. Thanks again for talking.
Okay, first of all, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, that's good now. Thank you.
Okay, cool beans. All right. Where are we? Okay, cool. Okay, so thanks again, Fred, for inviting me to this talk meeting. I wanted to present last year, but I was caught up with a whole bunch of PhD thesis related stuff. So yeah, so this is the title of my talk today, Future Curiosity, the Art of Wise, and House of Science Visualization. But essentially, what I want to present to you today is my experience as an aspiring science communicator over the past 4 years. So, okay. So before we begin, I just wanted to briefly introduce who I am. So I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Australian Centre for Ecogenomics, or ACE, at the University of Queensland. And as a group, what we focus on is bacteria and other different microorganisms that live in various habitats around the globe. And we try to determine what their activities have implications in different aspects in our society. And my PhD project in particular was looking at these different groups of bacteria that live in various oxygen depleted environments. So we're talking about things as oil sand, alcohol fermentation pits, those sort of environments. And I just submitted my thesis last January, and I am waiting from the examiners to get back the results in April. So I am currently sitting on the finish line, but haven't really crossed it yet. But previously, before starting a PhD, I was actually a computational biologist at the Michael Smith Genome Science Center in Vancouver, Canada. And that's where I was really introduced to Tableau. And there I was involved with developing a platform for the laboratory technicians to monitor the qualities of their laboratory results. And that was really important for them to determine whether the data would be suitable for the downstream analysis for other biologists and the like. So I do have quite a bit of biological and computational science background, but really my interest always has been specifically focused on environmental microbiology and also visualizing the arts that's related to that field. So really, if my mother was to come up to me and say, what's science visualization and why it's important? Well, I would basically tell her it's science visualization is a visualization about science. But anyways, in more detail, I think what it entails is, first of all, in a science visualization, we have a data that explains what the problem is, okay? And then we have other data or images that would say, well, how is that problem significant? And why are we trying to discuss this problem? And the how also has a different connotation in the sense that we can explain, well, how are these data being generated? And what's the reason for using certain methods to generate these data? And that really goes well together with the question of why. Okay, so put all these together makes, at least in my opinion, these three elements together makes what the science visualization really is. And why the reason why it is so important to try to communicate science this way is because, as you may have already known, science is almost everywhere in our society. And if you think about all these recent events that's been happening in the news, so for example, forest fire, the COVID situation, that all involves science to at least some degree. And in the future, I believe it's really important for the public to be aware of that the whole important roles that science is playing in our society. Okay, so really the science communication, it has been around for a long time, even before the whole Tableau and these different technologies came out. So this is the one good example of this science communication and visualization. And some of you may be remember what this is, but if not, this is the map of the cholera cases around in the Soho neighborhood in London back in the late 19th century. And this was generated by a doctor named John Snow. And if you think of the name, you probably think of the guy at the top, but that's not the dude we're talking about. It's more of the handsome looking guy at the bottom. But really what this map shows here is with this bar, with this in the map, you'll see these dark bars. And what these bars are, if you actually look at them, zoom out, what these are, they're actually stacked lines. And each line is the case of the cholera. And when you actually map this, when John Snow actually mapped this in the neighborhood, what he found was that all these cases were nearby this water pump. And that water pump was actually the cause of these cases of cholera, and that was infected. And something I haven't really showed in this slide is John Snow also conducted some other surveys outside of this area where the water sources were not contaminated with cholera. So there he found that there were no cases of the diseases there. So this is one good example of how the science visualization and communication can actually help the society in terms of the healthcare. Another good case here is the story of penicillin. And penicillin was one of those first generations of antibiotics. And this was originally discovered in the late 1920s by a Scottish scientist, Alexander Fleming. And this whole discovery in itself was very accidental. And what he saw here was, he saw a lot of these petri dishes that was contaminated with some fungus. But this fungus apparently had some sort of antibacterial activities in them. So he reported his discovery in the publication the year after. But what he failed to do here was actually convince the other scientists that, hey, this fungus actually has this antibacterial capacity. And the reason for this inaction, at least for him, was that he thought, well, this penicillin probably could not be extracted in a large quantification to the point that it probably won't be used in an actual real life cases. But then, years passed, and then in the late 30s, the Second World War broke out. In the year after, this scientist, Australian scientist, by the way, named Howard Fery, actually managed to extract the concentrated penicillin from this fungal culture. And the year after, they managed to use this penicillin against the policeman in the US in 1941. And this nearly became a successful case, but what happened there was they actually ran out of the penicillin supply. So this first patient ended up dying. And so what they learned from this mistake, and they decided to just increase the extraction dosage of penicillin. And then they finally managed to successfully treat a person in 1942. And then both US and the UK government thought, hey, this thing actually really works here. So why don't we then try to provide this, produce in the mass productions for the war efforts? Okay, but again, I want to take your attention again between this 1929 to 1939. This is really good food for thought, but just think about what would have happened if Fleming actually managed to convince the fellow scientists to try to get this in a mass production. And back in those days, when you have the bacterial infection, it was almost like a death sentence. So there were lots of these infection cases and death cases between these then. But I mean, these things could have been easily prevented at least to a certain degree, if Fleming actually did something about it. And this again highlights why this science communication is so important in our society. Okay, so speaking of which, how does, at least in the case of Tableau, what does science visualization look like? Well, science visualization, I think, can have a lot of flavors, but this is just one flavor where it actually triggers some sort of action from the society. It's actually asking, okay, and this particular dashboard was made by a group in Mexico called Data Mares, and these guys do a lot of important work in terms of ocean conservation and a lot of ocean organism conservation. So I posted a link here in the bottom right corner. So if you're interested, please do check out. Really awesome contents by these guys. But this particular one is about a mangrove in the different coasts in Mexico, and the number of hectares in which the trees are being cut off from this mangrove. Okay, and this has several elements that makes this a good visualization. And one of these elements is the actual little blurbs about this background and significance. Why is this issue important, right? So for example, here they say mangrove sequester and store carbon, and when they're deforested, these value services are lost. And that already in itself is a good start to saying why this issue is so important, okay? And then they follow this up by generating a simple map viz here with some sort of context, right? That now this is showing in different areas of Mexico, certain number of hectares of forests are being cut out. And that's a really good context. And then at the very end of this, they have this visualization that triggers what in this area, certain, this deforestation could be reduced by this much to actually prevent this carbon loss. So that's really triggering an action, right? So these 1, 2, 3, A, B, and C, boom, really good contents to show the good visual science communication here. Another flavor is just, well, it doesn't necessarily have to trigger an action, but it can still inform people about why certain things do happen. And this was created by myself last year, showing the different areas in the Great Barrier Reef where the corals were being bleached. So I think this issue has been tackled by a lot of different Tableau community members, and there has been a lot of great works on this topic, including the one that Fred posted out, I think it was last year. So this was that was one of my actual inspiration of creating this. But what I noticed here was they weren't necessarily describing, well, why do bleaching happen? So what I ended up doing was to create this infographic at the bottom showing a different scientific reasons for why the bleaching do happen. And I think this is because this generates a lot of good ideas and really explain, allows people to explore the curiosity. Well, why do this happen? Why does global warming or the acidity, the increased acidity in the ocean cause the bleaching? Okay, so there's that sort of that element in it. Okay, so having explained that, I just wanted to kind of go through at least how do I create this sort of visas. And then this, being that these are a data viz, I wanted to I want to explain where I get the data from. So the first source would be a lot of these government institutions where they store public data on these issues. And you can just go there and collect the data as you need, and then you can store them for the usage. If you're more keener like myself, you want to know, well, I want to know things in more detail, then what I do is I look for other more related research articles. And so far, the Google Scholar has been my friend, okay? And if you search in Google Scholar, you'll see you'll find a lot of good articles where they actually provide the data that the public can actually use under a certain set of permissions. So this is something that you can definitely use. And I know Google Scholar is actually, sometimes when you're working at home, you are unable to access this. So access some of these articles. So what I found is that when you actually go into the school libraries or at the colleges and universities, they have a lot of subscriptions to different journals that you can get access to. So this might be a really good case in terms if you want to use the Google Scholar. Okay, and once you have the data, then you want to try to visualize that. And one of the questions that I get, and a lot of people get, is what chart type is best for science visualization? Well, I guess I always ask myself what the take-home message is, right? And the challenge of the visualization, like science visualization, for example, is you want to try to deliver that fundamental scientific concepts without confusing a lot of people. And you want to also try to deliver the main story in the same way. So what I tend to do is I try to keep things as simple as possible. So this is the good example here on the right, where I use the bar charts to visualize the number of bacterial infections, bacterial resistance cases across different parts of the globe. Okay, and this was one of my primary visualizations I did back, I think, 2 years ago. But once you're more comfortable with this sort of simple type of visualization, then you can then try to maybe explore some of more complicated type which other members of the Tableau community has been using. But the question that you should always ask when you're doing is whether that would actually enable you to deliver the message in a very comprehensible manner. Okay. Aside from the actual data visualization, you want to also try, what I tend to do is I try to deliver more of the scientific context to the data by generating these infographics. And this is one of the tools that I use called BioRender. And BioRender is actually a subscription-based online tool where they have a lot of these scientific icons, like a biology-related icons. And it's a drop and drag where you can drag these into the platform and generate these lots of awesome looking infographics. And this is how I create how I create a lot of these figures. And I have a lot of these, I have some examples that I created using a BioRender. But you don't really always have to use BioRender to do this. If you feel like you want to just kind of simplify this, or you don't have access to BioRender, you can even do this using tools such as the NOM project, and combine that with Illustrator or Inkscape. And here I have examples that I used just using a PowerPoint. And this really delivers not just the flair, but also yet another dimension to that context, like how are the data being generated, right? Or even just simply what is this visualization about, okay? And finally, when you have generated all these, put all these data and images together and make these awesome looking figures, what you should always do is you should follow the etiquette: citation, citation, citation. Because like with these, it's always good to remind people where you're getting your data from, because these studies that's mentioned takes years of work of efforts by different groups of people. This effort, so you should always acknowledge that. All right. So having said that, that's the end of my talk, and I thank you for your attention. I would always like to connect with you and discuss with you about a lot of the things I do and what you do. So here's my Twitter tag. So feel free to follow me, and yeah, I'll just leave it to you for a question. Thank you.
Awesome, Young. Clap, clap, clap. I'll also share on the chat your Tableau public profile, Young. So if you guys are interested to check Young, I think those are screenshots, but the real these are really amazing. Can I open the floor, turn the camera on and maybe your microphone. If you have questions for Dave, Scott, or Young, just feel free to just pick your microphone and then have a chat on, well, just a normal chat and say hello, and how did you go?
Just quickly, Scott had to leave. He had some internet issues, so afraid that he's gone, but I can possibly help if there's any questions on what he had.
Hello, my question is for Young. Okay, so there was one of the slides that I did miss and I didn't get to note down on them. Is it okay if you could go through them and I could just take a screenshot?
I'll just share the screen again then. Would that? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That'd be okay. Yeah.
We're going to be showing the video as well online.
If it is,
so you can also watch
if it is more comfortable, we could download the slides from somewhere.
So tell us, what did you want to find out again?
So there's one of the slides that I found very useful, and I didn't get a chance to note down some of the important things on the slides. So I was hoping if Young could go back to one of those slides and I could just take a quick screenshot. It was in the middle of the thingy, and it was about like who you're presenting to. So you have to understand the audience and what they want to know. And I would say,
I think it's this one, wasn't it?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Young.
Yep.
Is it possible to get that entire slideshow?
Yeah, sure. What would be the best way of doing to share the slides? Because I'd be happy to share with everyone.
Yeah, you could drop it in the chat. Can you attach document in the chat? I think you can.
Is that possible? Let me try.
Yeah, you can attach. Maybe you can put a PDF or something. I believe you can.
With the LinkedIn group, or would that be an option?
Yeah.
How about this? I'll send you the PDF file to you over email, Fred, and maybe you could.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's a good idea. Because
Yeah,
I would do a follow-up email with the YouTube link anyway when it goes live, when the recording is live, so I can just attach the document.
Yeah. Or I can even attach it to the follow-up email. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Frederic, would you already have our emails, or would you like me to shoot an email?
I'll just write your name down, Yuma. If maybe what you can do, Uma, is put your email in the chat as well, if you don't mind, just as a private message. If you don't.
Yes. Yeah. No problem at all. Thank you very much, Frederic. Yeah.
Cool. That's great. So, any more comment, concerns, questions?
Yeah, it's Sam here. It's nice to say hi finally to you, Young. It's lovely. We chat on Twitter sometimes, so it's really like, thank you so much. I know how busy you are and how dedicated you were to your PhD. It's really lovely just to say hi, and thank you so much for doing your presentation. Your work is phenomenal, and the way that you deliver your concepts, which are obviously so complex, and distill it into some more simple concepts for people like us is really inspirational. So thank you so much, and thanks for some of your tips down there. I've like frantically written down some stuff as well, so it was really good. I really appreciate it.
You liked it. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to be looking up the Noun project and Inkscape and all of those stuff.
Yeah, it's a great tip. I've learned a lot as well, and I've learned a lot from Scott as well, even though it was a bit complex for me, but it was good. So don't forget to sign up. If you go on I think Karen shared the link, you can sign up to the user group email list so you get notified. Chris, who's still online, is running the Cine Tableau user group. I don't know if Chris, you want to say who you are.
Hey guys, who am I? I'm one of about 4 or 5 people that run the Sydney Tableau user group, but the beauty of virtual user groups is you can go anywhere, so it's easy.
Cool. And so there's a Tableau, there's a Singapore user group coming up next week. Cine user group is coming up as well very soon. So yeah, keep an eye on those newsletters from Tableau. I think there's always good content. Did
you mention the mega super user group, the ANZ one? Has that been mentioned already with Steve Wixler?
No, Chris, do you want to chat about it?
Yeah, so Sydney, along with Melbourne, Brisbane, Auckland, Christchurch, hopefully Canberra, Adelaide and Perth are running a mega group on the 3rd of March at 10 a.m. I can quickly dig up a
That's
link.
9 a.m. Brisbane time, by the way.
9 a.m. Brisbane time, you're right, and well, 10 a.m. Sydney, so adjust for your local thing. And while I'm talking, I'm trying to type at the same time, which never goes down well. So what we're going to do is have a presentation by Steve Wexler, who is a 5-time Zen master, and is doing a presentation for us, or for basically for everybody. And I'm still trying to find the link so I can post it in here, but anyway, I'll do that later. And there's another presenter from the US as well, and then there's some upcoming features of Tableau. So if you've got some time on a Wednesday morning-ish, depending on where you are, then feel free to jump in. And I think I've just found the link there, so I'll put it in the chat as well.
I was looking for the link as well. Nice.
And I think Steve is going to be offering Asia Pac timings for some of his training as well coming up. I don't know the date specifically. I feel like it's sometime in this first half of the year, but specifically for Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore time zones, because he's in the US, right? So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. He's definitely a full-on legend.
Definitely.
Sam, you might want to tell everyone exactly who Steve is.
I think he just got a good intro, didn't he? So,
I think be more specific.
I don't know. Master?
So he's I was thinking about the books, his specialty, that sort of thing.
You're talking about like the surveys and stuff like that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, survey data. Yeah, so yeah, he's the guru for a lot of the survey data and understanding how to best shape the data to get the types of visualizations and answers, Likert scales, and there's a lot of different ways that survey data presents itself much more difficult or more in a more complex way than normal data sets, and so it's basically how best to kind of reshape that and then visualize it. So yeah.
And the big book of dashboards.
Yep, I was just going to say he co-wrote the big book of dashboards, and he's got a book coming out later this year as well, talking about the title is The Big Picture. So I think there'll be more information about that at the tug as well.
Okay, if I may be allowed to speak, I think I have a question for Young. Okay, so I think this is one of the things that I learned about, I think halfway through last year, that some people think in words and some people think in images. And I think when we are representing data in different ways as well, I think it's something that we need to take note of, that how do we represent data that people who think in words can understand it, and people who think in images can understand it as well. So what I'm trying to understand is like, how would we use some sort of a same figure that can accommodate, or that can be, let's say, absorbed by people both who are visual thinkers and both who think in words as well, if I'm getting my question across properly.
So let me see if I can reiterate the question and see if I.
Yeah.
So you're asking how I would, make the images to be understood by both people who knows the topic and people who are not aware of the topic. Like,
No, actually, what I'm trying to say is that people who think in images and people who think in words. So like visual thinkers and
okay.
Yeah, because I think it's a gap in the way that, for example, if we're not very certain of our audiences because sometimes they are very large. So there's a gap. Like we need to make sure that we use the perfect kind of visuals, and sometimes the perfect kind of visual might be a purely visual aid that might only be suitable for visual thinkers, but it might not suit verbal thinkers in a way.
Right, because you're saying there's a difference in the way people learn, so it's not, visual aid might always not work for people who are, say, learning in terms of the words. Okay.
Yes.
At least from my experience, I try to accommodate a large group of people as possible, because you're always in back of your mind that, well, you're not always be able to make everyone understand things, right? And this is really the reason why you want to try to keep things as simple as possible. That's one of the reason why, you know, this whole question of bar chart, line chart versus something more complex. Because if you start adding, you know, more complex stuff to without even knowing your audiences, you just open the whole can of. So you want to, as a person who's presenting that, you want to try to prevent often as much as possible. Yeah. Right. I think there's always I think it's always about the timing. There's a time for you to like kind of experiment things on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a time to actually think about while you're presenting in this field where not a lot of people are from the same background as you are, and you want to try to like, you know, keep things simple.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think one of the very good things that you said was to provide context for the diagrams that you're presenting. So not just have purely visual aids, but you know, underneath them, write some sort of a context and incorporate words into them themselves. I think that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was very useful as well.
Yeah. I think just if I may add, I think words are really good, especially during at the sort of beginning of things. You want again, you also words can. When you're writing something down, you can always fall into the trap of like adding a bunch of scientific lingos and other things, and you want to avoid that and still deliver that main core message, and that can be sometimes tricky. And I think that really also comes with the practice. Yeah, but
yeah. No, I think you're very much right about that, because in the start, I think considering like how much jargon we get exposed to in the scientific fields, I think it's better to introduce the word and then introduce the image afterwards so people can associate the two things together. And then moving forward in the same presentation, we can present more visual aids because words have already been incorporated to it, and the visuals can extend the concept if I maybe say so. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
I agree.
Yeah, just on that, Young, like, have you had any kind of design training or anything? Because your visualizations always look so beautiful. It's like going into a garden when you have a look at your portfolio, you just scroll down. It's so pleasurable to look at. So where did you get that mix of kind of art and data from?
Well, I didn't really have a formal training, but really I think it really came from my when I was doing my master's program in Vancouver. My master's supervisor was he was very sort of how you put it, like I guess detail oriented, and he was really keen on trying to visualize these data in a sort of, I guess you want to try to add not only the details but also like make things simple enough for other scientists to understand. And there was also, when I was doing my master's, there was also a fellow named Martin Shurinsky. Actually, he also works with me in the cancer agency at the Genome Science Center. And I think he's still around, he's working there. And if you're interested, I can send you his Twitter tag. But he does lots of interesting data visualization stuff, though not in Tableau, but like, and that's where I actually learned a lot of design elements from. So yeah, definitely someone to really check out.
Yeah, that'd be great. That link, go either on Twitter or wherever you want to send it.
Like, are you aware of this software called Circles?
No.
So Circles is a program that you can generate. You generate the circular visualizations. And you can do like a lot of these different data designs with circles. Like if you look into Tableau, like sometimes you see like you have the circles with this lot of like ribbons kind of going across like this.
Yeah.
That's actually originally from Circles. And she was the person who actually created the software.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm taking time. Okay, sorry. I think I'll just go back to what I think the discussion we were having. It just occurred to me that I think because Young was using a lot of symbols and scientific photos in a way, like animations in a way, the presentation, it just occurred to me that I think people are really good at recognizing symbols and memorizing them and understanding them. And I think if we present the verbal information first, and then present a present a photo at the end, which summarizes the concept in a way, I think that might be a good way to incorporate both the verbal and the visual. What do you say about that, Young? Would that be okay?
Yeah, it's really about what I guess the topic that you're presenting, and it's the order is always different from the project to project. Like you want, again, it also kind of goes back to like who your audiences are. So sometimes you'll just have like same order of verbals and images, across all your things. Other times it might be just a whole complex, just mixed bag. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. I might have to sign off.
Yes. Thank you. As always, good presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, see you next time. So keep an eye on the email on the LinkedIn for the next session, or join those Singapore user group. Thanks again for Young and Dave, and thanks again for Scott, even though he's not there anymore. And then we'll see you guys online, or maybe in person soon. Next couple of months we might just meet up in person. But
cool.
Yeah, that
good
could
to
be
see everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.